Good morning. My name is Marcia Stromgren, and you've tuned into Just the Facts. I have in the studio today Donna Bergstrom, who is running for Lieutenant Governor in the state of Minnesota. Welcome.
Hi, Marcy. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you here, Donna. Donna, I'd like you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself, and you can do a little bit of your bio, especially your background and why you're suited for this particular office.
Sure. Well, again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's really nice when I get to be somewhere really close to home because I've been traveling the state all over for the last 7 months. But I live right here in Duluth. I live over on the East End. I grew up in Carlton, Minnesota, which is just down the road. A family of 7. Dad worked at Potlatch Paper Mill. Mom was stay-at-home. And I graduated from high school in 1981. And I wanted to go to a big university, so I went down to the University of Minnesota and got my degree in political science. And I like to tell people, what do you do with a degree in political science? My intention really was to go to law school, but I wasn't quite ready at that point. So I went ahead and backpacked around Europe. I saved up some money over the summer and took my Let's Go Europe book with me, $5 a day, that type of thing. Back in the day, we used to have those books. And
what an adventure that must have been.
It really was. It was such a great experience. And, you know, over and over again, I kept hearing from people, you are so fortunate to be an American. You are so lucky to live in the greatest nation in the world. I mean, literally over and over every country that I went to. And that resonated with me. So when I got back home here, after about 6 months being overseas, I decided really the direction I should take is to join the military and just to give back to this great country that, you know, everybody was telling me was so great, and I realized really was. I mean, we have so many freedoms, you know, so many opportunities to live our life however we choose. So I did. I joined the United States Marine Corps Reserve, and I went down to Officer Candidate School in Quantico, Virginia. I think we started out with somewhere around 90 of us ladies, and I think about 22 of us graduated. So it's a tough program. You know, they're the smaller service. They want to make sure that, you know, we're the few, the proud, the Marines. And I got my commission in December of 1987 as a second lieutenant. And from there, the Marine Corps does something a little different. They send all their newly minted officers to a basic school for 6 months. So we learn each other's fields, so artillery, logistics, supply. We all work together and learn how the Marine Corps works together as really a small unit. And from there, you also get your military assignment. And I came out of that school with a signals intelligence electronic warfare military occupational specialty. So I went on to intelligence school. And that was in Washington, D.C., and once I completed that, I was sent to Kaneohe Bay in Hawaii with 1st Radio Battalion. So that was my first assignment. And after that, I had assignments as a detachment commander in Japan. I was a company commander in Goleta Island, Panama for Company D, Marine Support Battalion. And then I worked as an operations officer at headquarters in Quantico and had some other assignments, one being the military liaison for U.S. Senator Barbara Mikulski, where I worked actually in her D.C. Office and helped the military policy side of her office, and then also the staff would help me learn how the federal process goes. So it was a nonpartisan role, but it's something that she requested. I interviewed and was selected for it. So was a protocol officer for a while. So I had a really good experience in the military. Ended up being closer aligned towards the end with our cybersecurity at the end. 2010, my husband and I were thinking about moving back here to my hometown of, or my home state, Minnesota. He grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. So there was a little convincing to do there with the heat versus the cold. But I really wanted my son, our son, who was 4 at the time, to have sort of that same free range experience that I had. You know, we grew up, my parents in the summertime, Mom would open the door at 7 and say, don't come back till, it's dark. I'll put sandwiches on the picnic table. So we grew up making forts, fishing, just being creative in our play. And 7 kids, there was always somebody to play with. We had neighbors around us too. So I loved, my experience here in Minnesota, and I definitely wanted to move back here to the place that I know and love. I consider this home. This is where I'm meant to be. So came back, and we just thought we were going to fish and hunt and have potlucks at families' homes, and it really didn't take us long to figure out that there was a lot of changes that Minnesota had made since the time that I had left. One of them being taxes. And even though I started working at the Fond du Lac Center for American Indian Resources as a benefits coordinator for our folks needing insurance, and this was pre-Affordable Care Act, we found ourselves, looking at our paychecks going, wow, it's really difficult here. Our taxes are really high. Property taxes, we had bought a house, and we were just saying, wow, this is different. And then in addition to all the government overreach that we saw.
So let me interject here.
Yes.
You are from a Native American background, am I correct?
That's right, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And so you bring that perspective to the table as well as all of this other experience. And I have to say, I don't know that I remember all of that from the last time I interviewed you, but you have a vast experience that many people going into office have never had. You've worked in different countries, so you've had to deal with different nationalities and languages, and just a whole plethora of experience that would be really beneficial to your office, I am sure. So
yes.
That's just amazing to me, and I think that brings a lot of advantage into the office for sure.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely, and Jeff will say again, he really looked at my broad and diverse background, what I had done with my life, the fact that I had lived a life of honor and integrity, and that was really the driving force for him reaching out to ask me if I would run. In addition to that, it would be historic. I would be the first Native American Lieutenant Governor elected, and I also like to say I'd be the first woman veteran as Minnesota's Lieutenant Governor. Second in the nation, I believe Florida had the first woman veteran, but so really historic, and I'm incredibly proud of my heritage, which includes Scandinavian immigrants. My grandfather's parents, my dad's father, his parents came from Sweden, and so my grandpa was born here in Duluth and graduated from Central High School. So I've got roots here, and my dad was very proud of his heritage as well. We ate lutefisk at Christmas time. My mom knows how to make, lefse and that sort of Swedish meatballs, and but so it's this great mixed, background that I have, in addition to all these really wonderful experiences that I've had, that I just come with this really full basket of knowledge and experience, and I'd love to share that with the state of Minnesota.
Well, there's plenty of Scandinavians in Minnesota, so
yes.
in familiar territory. Yeah. I too have Scandinavian backgrounds, and there's a lot of stamina in us.
That's right.
Scandinavians, as there is in other nationalities as well. But nonetheless, I have to bring that in because my mother's mother came here at 13 by herself from
goodness.
Sweden. And yeah.
Determined, strong.
Right.
Yep. Exactly.
So I think that we have an understanding of what Minnesota's all about in that regard, as far as the peoples go too. So
yeah, and I really cite my dad as instilling in me that great work ethic. He grew up in the Depression era, and we always had a big farm garden, a farming garden. If he wanted something extra for the family, he took on another job, and he can honestly tell you how much he paid for all of us kids to be born, because he paid for us, and so there was that personal responsibility ethic too that he instilled in us. So a lot of good things, I think, with my family background.
Well, that's great to hear that. Now, let's go on to some of the issues. And
Yes.
you did mention, yes, looking at the paycheck. I worked in a booth this summer, Minnesota Voters Alliance. I'll have to show you that paperwork. But the gap between what we earn and how the taxes keep climbing, there is quite a gap. between this lower level line, your earnings, and taxes. It's getting wider and wider.
Sure.
And so the take-home pay is getting smaller, and yet the cost of living continues to rise. Do you have a proposal or some ideas anyway, at least, of how we can cut government down and give the people the needs, not the wants, but how to make Minnesota work better again?
Sure. And so I will just add quickly here, because we didn't do that in the beginning, I am running with Jeff Johnson for governor.
Yes.
So as his lieutenant governor running mate, and really it has been my job to promote his vision as a lieutenant governor, because as you know, we don't run as a standalone office. So one of the things that Jeff has always said is that he believes we should eliminate our Social Security tax that our seniors are burdened with. That's a tax already that's been taxed, so he wants to eliminate that. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is he wants tax conformity with the federal bill that was passed, because when we do our taxes, it's going to be a mess if we don't get that conformity. So that would be one of the top things that he would do. The other thing is really Jeff is looking at auditing our programs, making sure that we have programs that work. If they're not working, why aren't they working? Do we need to bolster them, or do they just need to change, and then that money goes into the programs that are working? So that would be another aspect he would look at. Another thing too is to look at the fraud. And really, when we see $100 million, which has been proven as fraudulent activity, and nobody called it out, they just turned a blind eye to it. All this fraud that we see, that's $100 million. That could have really gone into some good programs that people need. Of course, then you got the MNLARS, the licensing program that has really been so unsuccessful, and they just keep pouring money into it. So Jeff's vision really, when he talks about lowering our taxes, it's really asking government to be accountable and really looking at government and saying, why do we have a government, in the first place? A government is meant to do the things collectively that we couldn't do individually, or will do better collectively than we would do as individuals. So it's really set up to serve people. And we have heard over and over, and he's been on the campaign trail now, I think he announced probably in May of 2017, and then we announced in May of 2018 that he wants to give government back to the people, because people tell us over and over, whether it's the Pollution Control Agency or the Department of Natural Resources or the Licensing Bureau, it's not working for us. It's working for itself. These programs, people will come in with an idea and adjustment, and it may resonate with the governor, but then they get to the commissioner, and the commissioner says, well, we're not going to do it. Well, it kind of is a Class A head scratcher then, because the governor's supposed to be in charge. So Jeff wants to make sure that the commissioners and the agency heads are carrying out his vision, which is really to overthrow the status quo, and that's been his tagline throughout, that government is meant to serve the people. The people aren't meant to serve government. So he's really looking forward to that. He is talking about possibly, seeing about rolling audits, possibly talking about baseline budgeting. So we have, you start from scratch rather than just building. Like you said, you build on what has already been there the year before, and that's why everything just keeps growing. So we need to stop this growth in our government and just figure out what's working. How can we become more accountable in our programs?
Well, I'm a constitutionalist, and I think I've told you that before.
Yes.
Having been in both parties. Mm-hmm. We believe in limited government and what you're talking about. Both Republicans and Democrats have grown big government over the years. When I give you the copy of the LEA report, you will see that there's omnibus bills that is illegal in Minnesota being voted on all the time by both parties. Now, I'm tired of being a serf to the government, and that's what goes on in other countries. It's not supposed to be here in America, this is a republic. It's not a democracy, it's a republic. And so I like what you're saying about Jeff, and I want to hear more, because education is one of the key issues that I monitored for many years. We have kids in the Duluth School District that can't read past a 5th grade education. Now, how are they supposed to go out there and get a job and be successful? They'll end up on the taxpayer rolls, more big government, to supply what they have for their needs. Art Johnston was in here a few weeks ago, and You know, we've lost so many people in the Duluth district because of the increasing class sizes, and I heard this from a teacher the other day. So do you have some thoughts from Jeff that you could share with the public as to how we can rein in Minnesota's deplorable accountability to our taxpayers?
Yeah, and that's a great question. You covered a lot of ground there, but certainly Jeff believes too in that limited government. Again, going back to government's meant to serve. So, you know, going through those audits and finding out which programs are really working is really what he wants to do. Making sure that government understands what its role is. So that'll take us back. We might have to cut programs, you know, and that is always very unpopular. But if everything's a priority, we like to say nothing's a priority. So if you're going to keep everything a priority, then you're not going to have money for roads and bridges and for that type of thing. And we have heard people say, you know, we don't mind paying taxes for our police to, you know, come out when we call them, our fire department to come out when we call them. Sure, all those things make sense. But to have programs that aren't working, and Jeff likes to, you know, cite all the programs that we have towards a particular reentry from prison. That's great. We love those kind of programs. But if you have programs that aren't really successful in those areas, let's shift it to the ones that are. And again, looking at other states, how are other states able to run programs? Can we, you know, model off of them? And then just going back to our communities, you know, from a federal level, the states are supposed to be the incubators of good ideas that get bubbled up to the federal. From a state's perspective, it's our communities. So what are our communities doing that are helping tackle some of these issues that aren't growing government? And Jeff will say, both sides are responsible. You know, he has made a pledge that he will not sign those big omnibus garbage bills. Oh. And what he honestly, you know, intends to do when he's in office is work from the beginning with the legislature. What are the things that we agree on all collectively together? Let's get those things done and then work on solving those other big issues where we're really far apart. So that's his vision, to be involved in the process. And I certainly know that from his perspective, he wants me engaged in those talks, working with our communities, traveling around the state, hearing the different priorities from the communities. And education, as you mentioned, always comes up. And we know Minnesota is one of the worst in the nation. And what we have done for the last 40 years is just continue to throw money at it. And I was at another event where I said, you know, Einstein gave us the definition of insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So Jeff's vision, again, is to do something different. He wants to empower parents. Let parents make the choices for what is the best education system for their children. And then institute some type of a trigger. So if the school is failing, the parents have an opportunity to come and say, look, you know, let's turn this into a charter school. Let's, you know, do something different. Whatever needs to be done to help get our kids out of those locked situations, because we are in a labor shortage. And I can tell you right now, that is the top issue that businesses talk about. Well, I shouldn't say top. Taxes is probably the top.
Yes,
but
it's
a tight second.
Yeah.
That they tell us they cannot hire people to fill the jobs that they have. And I've traveled all over the state, and I cannot tell you how many times I've seen help wanted, hiring now, apply within. Everywhere you go. So if you want to work, you can work. And we need to make sure that we graduate every single one of our kids starting right now, because we are going to need them in the workforce. We're going to need them to take our place. You know, we're going to need them as our doctors, our lawyers, our mechanics, our, you know, teachers, everything. So we need to pay attention to that. We need to really focus on our education.
Well, Common Core, which is currently being used in the educational system, was passed by a former Republican governor. It is destroying the ability of children to want to learn. And Dr. DuPesta came here a couple years ago, and I filmed him for 2.5 hours. He said he'd give us an hour and a half, and I was pretty tired by the end of that one. Yeah. But this guy is an educator in the Wisconsin college systems down in La Crosse. He knows what he's talking about. He's a well-known, well-respected speaker throughout the United States of America. And Common Core has got to go for the sake of our future, for our young people. When they come out of school, they will want a job because they have an education that has given them the tools so that they can go forward.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we talk to teachers all over the state who tell us they want local control over their curriculum, and they can't get that through the Common Core. So we agree that Common Core has not worked. And we know, when it started and how it started, and it was brought into the classrooms, and it's really just time to make that change.
What is the next third issue that you would like to tell the viewers about?
Well, we talked about taxes, we talked about education, we talked about overthrowing the status quo. I would say for Jeff, he really wants to make sure that people understand that he stands for law and order, and that our communities are going to be hurt, if not destroyed, by allowing us to become a sanctuary state. And that is a really big issue that we hear around the state as we travel with different folks. That means that we wouldn't comply with our federal immigration enforcement. Yeah. And it's astonishing, particularly for me, since I'm from the military, and I understand good law and order. We're a nation. We have a responsibility to protect our borders. I think every nation has that right and responsibility, whether you're talking about the Red Lake Nation up in Minnesota or any of the other 11 federally recognized tribes. Our nation, Canada, Mexico, everybody wants to protect their borders and know that the people that are coming in are going to be part of our collective process to help move our nation forward. So sanctuary state, which our opponent is promoting, is not something that Minnesota wants, and I think it's a terrible direction to head.
Well, I totally agree with you. Mm-hmm. And our forefathers, as we spoke earlier, came here legally. Mm-hmm. They needed to have sponsors, and they followed the rules, and they became a part of what had made America great at one time. The illegals are not doing that. And it's very troubling to see the results of what's happening, not only here in Minnesota, but the United States as well. And
your point is well taken, Marcia, because we've talked to legal immigrants who have come to us and said, I waited my turn. I've spent 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, in some cases, waiting for my paperwork to come through, lived in hardship in my previous country. But we followed the rules, and we don't think it's fair that others aren't asked to do the same. Now, there are situations where we have to take in folks immediately because they might be fleeing of some situation, but those should be rare. And we certainly, I think, need to tighten up our immigration policies. And certainly here in Minnesota, we have been so generous. We have 2% of the population of the nation in Minnesota, and we took in 13% of our refugee resettlement folks. And so we would like to just say we've been generous. We want to take a pause. We want to figure out how our community's doing, and we want to make sure that Minnesota is safe again.
Well, we don't have much time left. It's amazing how fast
it goes. So fast.
But there's something connected to the immigration that I think we should point out. Mm-hmm. I'm on the ballot.
Oh, yes.
So I can't be an election judge this time, but I was in the primary, and I have been since my son, who is now 50, he was a year old when I started.
Great, thank you.
So many years of seeing the change. And with what the city has allowed to happen, people can live in their cars. Where's their address because they don't have anything permanent to prove that they live in their car at the address they claim they live at? What is Jeff's stand on voter ID?
Well, yeah, and that's a great question, a good one to end with since we're leading up to the November 6th election. Jeff has talked about putting everything on the table that makes sense, either having voter ID, having provisional ballots, doing things that make sure that our voter integrity is intact. And we're certainly not interested in cutting people out of the process, but we want to make sure that legal citizens are voting and not folks that aren't in our country legally or that aren't citizens, because it's a right and responsibility of our citizens to do that.
And of course, there are citizens going to be imported in here to vote. There is this vouching for, I don't know, I've been told it's 7, but now I heard that it could be more than that. And there's no proof, so I think the provisional ballot is the only way to stop that. But the voter ID is absolutely crucial, as far as I can see it, to make sure. I mean, some people come to the table with the ID in their hand already, so that there's no problem with people showing an ID. Right. Who's to say you aren't voting for someone whose name you've decided to take and you know is on the roster. I think I saw that last fall when I was an election judge, and so 2 years ago. So we need to clean up the voter issue extremely soon.
Yes, yeah.
We don't want to go through another election cycle like we're going to be going through now.
Yep. And just a reminder that all the constitutional candidates are on the ballot. So we've got John Howe running for Secretary of State. That'd be a good person to put in there. Pam Myra for State Auditor, who's actually in CPA. And who am I forgetting? Doug Wardlow. Who's running for Attorney General. So all those candidates are really going to be instrumental in moving our state forward in the right direction.
And Jim Newberger.
And Jim Newger's running for to replace Amy Klobuchar, and Karen Housley is running to replace Tina Smith.
Yes.
Yes, so great slate of candidates, rock solid. It's been truly humbling and honoring to me to be on this slate of candidates. It's just awesome.
Well, I thank you for your sacrifice. I know what it is to forego family and whatever else is in your life during a campaign season. It's been difficult to get you in here, but I am so happy that you came in today, Donna.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you for all you do.
Well, I
Thank
do
you.
what I can.
Yes.
And now it's your turn, voters. You have an obligation to be extremely well informed, and you must not forget on Tuesday, November 6th, of your obligation for your own freedom's sake and your families to get out there and vote by becoming informed and doing the right thing. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Have a great day. Bye now. Good afternoon. This is Marcia Stromgren, and you've tuned into Just the Facts. I have in my studio as a guest today, Brandon Larson. He's running for the county treasurer's position in St. Louis County. Welcome.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Nice to have you, Brandon. Brandon, I'd like you to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about the position that you're seeking. And what is it you'd like to tell us today?
Well, I'm originally a graduate to the city of Virginia. I then attended the University of Minnesota Duluth, here in Duluth, and graduated with a bachelor's degree in management information systems, but I also have focuses in accounting and finance. Soon after I graduated, actually, I started with the St. Louis County Auditor's Office in 2006. I was hired as a Deputy Auditor and tax analyst with the office, with the Property Tax Division. And then in 2010, I was promoted to that of Tax Division Manager. I currently live in Mountain Iron, Minnesota, with my beautiful wife and 3.5-year-old daughter, and commute down from Mountain Iron down to Duluth. I've been driving for a little over 10 years now, but I've been with the auditor's office for 12. My office is responsible, and my duties are completely focused on property tax administration. I manage over $350 million for around 110, 115 taxing authorities. That's every single city, township, school district, and special taxing district in St. Louis County. So it's a pretty substantial position, and I take great pride in terms of making sure that what's being done is accurate, because it's the funding for the overall St. Louis County economy and all of our local governments. But my office also oversees everything with regards to property management. We had taken deeds, mortgage tax, creating new parcels, overseeing our GIS parcel maintenance for stuff that's available online, so people can go out and see their property online. I'm also the fiscal disparities coordinator for the 7 Iron Range counties, as well as we focus with everything with regards to tax increment financing districts, which are used for promoting development, typically by our HRAs and EDAs across the county. So it's a very numbers oriented, but I also have extensive experience with our elections department as well, and being clerk of the county board. I've been clerk of the county board dozens of times throughout my years with the county as well. So
I'm going to say, wow. I am not a numbers person, and so I'm so glad to know that I have a very capable person wanting to run for this position. This is truly amazing to hear the vastness of your responsibility. How absolutely crucial is it to have someone like yourself in that position as the county treasurer, auditor position? What ramifications could happen if somebody is not capable of overseeing how many staff you have? How many is that, by the way?
We have roughly around 70 staff total in the Auditor Treasurer's office between the 4 separate divisions that we have of the accounting, elections, our service center up at the Duluth Mall here, and we also have staff up in Virginia as well.
Okay.
So yeah, around 70 staff. Yeah.
So it's absolutely crucial that the person running for this office has a background as substantial as yours, so that you will make this transition from Don Dicklich, who's been in that position for, like you said, about 20-some years.
Yeah, he's been in there since 2004.
2004.
But yeah.
So, yeah, it's, tell us a little bit now about, I'm sure many people heard some of those terms,
Yep.
as I did. They have no clue what you mean, so could you explain that just a little bit more fully for them?
Yeah, so as I said, it's a lot of what I do is numbers oriented, but when you're dealing with, say, fiscal disparities or tax increment financing, what those are is that's sharing wealth or distributing wealth across multiple jurisdictions in St. Louis County. But by doing those tasks, it's given me a great relationship with officers from every city, township, school district. I work with all of them every year. They certify their budgets to me, and it really has helped me to get an understanding of what's going on in the overall economy of St. Louis County and the struggles that some small townships face on a yearly basis, as well as issues that are going on in school districts. You know, they ask me for property tax ramifications to our citizens if they have to change their budgetary needs. So that we can work on educating the citizens as well, because you'll see those sometimes on ballots that they vote on for referendums. So, and also being that I'm from Virginia and from the Iron Range, it's crucial that someone in this position, in my opinion, has a good understanding of the effects of the taconite industry and mining industry on the overall economy of St. Louis County. The sheer amount of money that comes from the Iron Range and is distributed regardless of people's positions on mining as well, but to have an understanding of where those finances are coming from and how they're being distributed. And I also think it's someone who has attention. As I said, I manage over $350 million for all the taxing jurisdictions, to be able to have an understanding of how budgets are handled, and in order to, as you say, to step up and communicate what's going on with the county board and the county administration, and have a good working relationship with them too. So.
Well, you know, Brandon, I used to be on Normanna Township Board. Okay. Yeah. First of all, I was running for supervisor, and the clerk decided to move out of the community, and so I ended up as the clerk instead. And I know about that relationship we have with the county as far as the tax issue goes. And then I moved over to the supervisor's position, which then I was in the authority to pass what the township decided it needed. I used to go to the SLCATO meetings, which is a St. Louis County Association of Township Officers. We meet up in Cotton. That's where I met Don Dicklich. And I was quite amazed to learn about how some townships don't have township tax because the mining companies pay that. And we didn't have that privilege down here in Normanna, although apparently there are some districts that do. So the mining has been an incredible support for the overall lifestyle of people on the Iron Range. And without that support, no township tax on their tax form. That's amazing. That's very helpful, especially when the mines have been down and these people are without work. Are they still paying township taxes?
Yes, pretty much all townships have some form of tax that the citizens are paying. Some townships are much smaller and have much smaller budgets, and much less responsibility for road and bridge maintenance, depending on if it's county roads or not. But pretty much every township has some type of levy that they certify. I haven't had any. There's many, there's unorganized, lots of unorganized areas across St. Louis County that, because they're unorganized, they can't levy for specific dollars. But since at least during my tenure here as well, it's pretty much every township has some form of levy that they certify to me. They may be receiving other funding outside of that doesn't go through the county, but everyone that I've dealt with, yes, I've had to talk with all the townships.
That's interesting. I'll have to talk to that woman. She's not on that board anymore, but I was on the township board from 2000 to 2009.
Okay.
So that was during that time. But they, for the most part, they have a township tax now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much every single township has certified a levy to me, at least for this upcoming year too. So pretty much every year, yeah.
Okay. Now, I know you were at a meeting that I was at yesterday, and you were talking about your actual role is to let the commissioners, there are 7 commissioners in St. Louis County.
Yep, 7, yeah.
As to how they can spend the money.
Yep.
And so you hold a pretty tight hand on where the line has to be drawn as far as how much they're going to get, or they have to increase our taxes. How have you seen that a major increase at all since you started working for the county?
In terms of, the county budget has gone up every year for numbers of factors. There's changes in local government aid, there's changes in terms of the necessary services what we have to provide to citizens. There's stuff with regards to as retirees occur. Everybody in St. Louis County and across the nation has felt the effects of increase in healthcare costs. So there's a number of factors that play into why budgetary stuff or budgetary needs go up. But I know that the county board and Don Niklich in his current role work very closely together and have great communication to, they're spending tax dollars on required programs, which they have to, and they are very discretionary in terms of frivolous spending of any sort. That at least in the history that I've seen here as well. So.
And you're governed by edicts from other levels of government as well.
Yeah.
You have to provide certain services, and you have no control over that whatsoever.
Yep. There's mandatory services that the state legislature mandates us to provide to townships or to citizens, I should say. And in the time that I've been with the county, there's been times where government aid has been reduced, but those services have not been edicted to be allowed to be cut. So local citizens have to make up the difference from that aid that they used to have. So that's why it's unfortunate sometimes when there is changes in that aid, because local citizens are feeling the burden because of that. So.
Well, local government aid is LGA.
Yep.
And while I was on the board, I recall that being cut.
Yep.
And so we were a small township. We don't have a lot of expenditures, but we as a board kept the costs down and the increase in the township tax to the citizens. And, we all felt pretty good about how we managed to get a new fire hall. We managed to get a new meeting room, which was the former Bay area of the fire hall originally. There's certain people that wanted to tear down the building and build it new, but we held the line and didn't have to pay for that. And so we have a nice meeting area and a very well-done fire department today in Normanna Township. And I was very happy to have been on the board at the time that it happened, so.
That's impressive.
What are some of the other, what some of the issues that you face currently that you see for the future of your job if elected on November 7th? 6th, excuse me, 6th.
I think that we can continue to improve with the utilizing new technology. Even a lot has improved since I've been with the auditor's office. It's a joint effort. It's not all because of me, but there's been a lot of change over the last 12 years. I still see that there's plenty of room for improvement for being able to take a lot of things that are still done with pen and paper and be able to digitize them or do things electronically. I think that, you know, there's been a lot of retirements that have occurred with the St. Louis County since I've been with them. We're still feeling the effects of that. We'll be feeling the effects of that probably for at least the next 10 years as a new wave of people continue to come in. That's something that a lot of industries face. But so that's why I've always been a big advocate of cross-training as much as possible. A lot of times with the use of new technologies and as new people come in and you get a new perspective on how to do things, we're able to not only increase efficiency, but you know, the ultimate goal is to reduce the need for as many workers as what was in the past because of that savings you get from efficiency or from new technologies as well. We're going to obviously, as local governments, as we talked about with local government aid, as changes occur, at the legislature and the state as well, there might be additional changes in terms of aids that we receive and edicts of services we provide. But
do you feel that local government aid was something that you'd like to see returned?
We still receive local government aid, but it would be nice, like I said, to ensure that it continues to remain protected and possibly, go up in the future. I mean, it helps everybody, but we still are receiving it, though. Yeah.
It's just not nearly as much as it was in the past, or?
Well, I mean, it's been fairly consistent. I mean, in the last 6-8 years that I've seen in terms of that, it hasn't really fluctuated at all.
Okay.
But yeah.
So I wasn't aware that it had been returned. Something also that you mentioned yesterday was, and I remember this, were the local assessors.
Yep.
Now you've streamlined that process.
Yep.
So even between you and the city, there's been a streamlining. Can you explain that to the viewers?
Well, the county, a few years ago now, has begun a county-wide assessment process. So all of the county assessment, or pretty much, I believe all of the county assessment, is being done entirely by the county. There isn't any more local assessors or city assessors anymore. It's been a learning curve. There's been some growing pains because of many areas across St. Louis County had to have values readjusted as there's just been a standardization of how assessment practices are being done across the county. But I feel it's been very good because now it appears that the ultimate goal is that every citizen across St. Louis County is paying their fair share, and that there's standardization in how things are done. We're also hoping that by continuing to implement that and provide resources for that type of a program or for that type of service, that we're going to help reduce the need for abatements and reductions of value. A lot of times people can petition if they feel their value is too high, and when those type of things occur and they win in court, that has a negative effect on not just the county budget but also local governments as well, because we're having to do refunds that we're not seeing that money back. So by having a standardization and a true form of assessment purposes or practices, we're hoping that will reduce the needs and the effects of those types of overcharging of people as well. So.
Well, I saw in my own business, I think, a very disturbing situation where we own a business on the Rice Lake Road, so it's in Rice Lake City, but formerly Township. And one part of the property is virtually unbuildable, and yet the taxes were overassessed for years, and we're not getting any refund on that. Finally, after complaining year after year, they went out and, oh yeah, we made a mistake. Well, your mistake cost us money.
Yep.
And I guess the question I'd ask you, is there any point in pursuing when you get that tax statement in the townships? I'm not familiar with the city, but I would imagine it's the same thing, where you have an opportunity and come and protest it. Well, I never went to the state about it, and I suppose I should have, but it was a time issue, new business owner to other things in life. Was that happening because the people out in the field were just not knowledgeable of assessing properly, or why did that kind of a thing, and I know it's happened to others, but why does that type of thing happen?
I really can't speak directly to that, as that's, like I said, that's kind of outside the purview of the auditor treasurer. However, there's just there's X number of people that work in the office, and especially with local assessors when that was occurring, and just the sheer amount of space that they have to assess. And they're on a quintile system, so they have to visit most properties once every 5 years, I believe. But like I said, I'm not an assessor, so I don't want to speak too much out of turn with that. But that's why we're hoping, as a county, that by implementing or by pursuing this new system that we are in right now, we can hopefully reduce that. But
So that would be
yes,
benefiting
that's
property
the ultimate
owners.
goal. Yes, because then your valuation of your property is. Should be in tune with what the actual market value of the property is, so that way you're not being over assessed as well, and also ensuring those people who might be under assessed are paying their fair share as well. So,
And I'm sure there's some of that out there.
oh yes, there's many times where values have gone up over the years as well too.
And especially if you had an assessor, like you said, wasn't doing its job.
Yep. And like I said, and that was one of the many factors as to why they pursued doing the county-wide assessment purposes, is ensuring that there's uniformity across the entire county. But I always encourage anybody, the assessor's department sends you out that valuation notice in the spring, and I always encourage taxpayers, if they look at those numbers and see that they changed, to always reach out to their assessor or go to their local, township stuff as well, and get educated as to why. Because sometimes mistakes do happen, so,
Well,
But I feel that they're doing, a very good job in what they're doing now, so yeah.
well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Out on the campaign trail a few years ago, I went to a business owner to get a vehicle fixed, and I just let my assessor deal with that. And I thought, how many other people in the county never even look at those evaluations, haven't got a clue if it's going up, they just go up and pay the bill. There are some people that don't do that, like myself, but isn't that an area that somehow the county could educate with a flyer in that proposed assessment? I mean, a couple word statement, just a quarter of a page, if you have an issue on this. Some people are subservient in nature and they just look at it, okay, I gotta pay this, I'm madder than a hornet, but I'll just pay it. Yeah. So could that be a possibility, as maybe say,
there's always room for education in terms, I'm a big proponent of trying to be transparent as much with the information and what's going on in our county. You have to get, as you say, some people don't even look at the notice. They just open it or throw it away or throw it on the counter or file it, but don't really have a great understanding of, the most often comment I get is, well, I saw my value was going up, but they don't correlate that if their value goes up, their tax is going to go up, because those are the two components of tax. You have valuation and tax rates.
And they're real happy to have the valuation go up, but when they pay the bill.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's always, I think there could be room for education on some of that, but, at the same time, are you sure that they're reading it? And the notices do say that if you do have an issue with the valuation, do contest it. But to your point, to educate them to understand that valuation will lead to an increase in their tax bill later that year, but they have to challenge it at that time in order to have anything change. Because a lot of times by the time they get the bill, it's too late for them to challenge their valuation. So
Yeah, they've missed that
Yep.
date that's stated on there when
Yep.
to be at that hearing to protest. Yes, yeah, like I said, he just turns it over to his tax assessor,
Yep.
so he has no clue what his business is paying or his house is paying. Ignorance is not bliss,
No.
not, especially when it comes to taxes.
Yeah,
Like they
exactly.
say, there's a certainty, death and taxes. So some of the other things that you're dealing with, you want to just, you talk about personnel. Are you able to fill your positions easily, or is there a workforce out there that is well prepared and able to come in and sit down and learn and take on?
yeah, we've been very lucky with the type of workforce that's been applying for county officers all across the board, from what I've seen and what I have heard as well. The county auditor treasurer has been very lucky with, we've had many qualified candidates for every open position we have. As I said, the turnover in our office has been fairly substantial since I started in 2006. My entire office is, my division, I've hired everybody that's been under my division. I've had, excuse me, at least 15 retirements since I started as well. So, I'm very confident with the applicant pool. We have obviously great colleges here in Duluth as well, so we get a lot of applicants from local people. So, yeah, I'm very confident with the future overall and the type of personnel that we're getting in St. Louis County. That's how we've been able to, maintain our bond rating, or get our bond rating up to AA+.
Oh, okay.
We have really great staff in the auditor's office. It's easy as deputies to want to take credit for what our staff does, but really they are the lifeblood of our office. And because of us being able to maintain that is a true reflection of all the hard work and the great people we have in our office. So,
When you talk about a AA rating, how do you compare, like, say, some other counties in the state of Minnesota? What does that, what does that mean to the people?
it means that the county is operating in a fiscally responsible. There's transparency in what we're doing. We're operating in a way where there's proper checks and balances to avoid any sort of mismanagement of funds or what you see in the news of corruption or any of that stuff. We get rated by outside agencies, and we have outside auditors that look at what we do on for our fund or our accounts payable and such. And so it's extremely important when they rate us that high. We are one of the highest bond ratings in the county, the AA+ bond rating. It allows us to affordably borrow money for bonding to invest in further infrastructure, road and bridge maintenance, other programs at much lower interest rates. So it's extremely important that we continue to have those controls in place, not only just to protect the citizens' funds, but so we can continue to invest in St. Louis County, which benefits all of our citizens. So.
Well, I've certainly seen some great improvements over the last few years, and so it says to me that things are going well, and we have qualified people in those positions. Anything else you'd like to tell our viewers in the last few minutes that we have left?
I said, I believe I have the most direct experience. Coming in, I had a lot to learn, and I'm not going to be naive and don't think that I'm going to have a lot to learn in this position as well. I have strived to make great relationships with department leaders all across St. Louis County. I work directly with the county administration and county board during their budgetary processes as well. I have a great understanding of our local economies, which I think is extremely important because as an elected official, I represent all of St. Louis County, every citizen. So that's why I believe that it's really important that the county auditor's position, still remains an elected position. I think it's also important that we continue to ensure that our elections remain fair and equitable, because that's the backbone of our democracy. But I'm also a member of the Minnesota Association of County Officers and Minnesota Association of County Auditors, Treasurers, and Finance Officers, which has given me a great tool to work with county auditors and treasurers all across St. Louis County. And I work directly with the Minnesota Department of Revenue and state legislature as well on new tax laws and administration. So I feel that having that those relationships and that education has really prepared me for this new challenge, and is excited to take on a new position in this. So, I'd appreciate the consideration. So.
Well, and when you talk about the opportunity to be on these other boards and whatnot, when I was in township government, I learned from my peers. That's why I kind of hungered for the meetings every month, because I learned something new that I could perhaps bring back to our board and make suggestions and make some changes, because we had a little bit of an eyes view on what they'd experienced in the past. And I find the same thing in the soil and water position, that I am able to learn from people all over the state of Minnesota by getting together at meetings and so forth.
Yeah, it's proven invaluable. There's many ideas that I get from other counties that I've implemented in St. Louis County as well, new technologies that I'm not aware are out there. So the sharing of ideas and education from amongst peers and education of myself to staff and to the local citizens has proven invaluable. So.
Well, it's just great to learn a lot more about the County Auditor Treasurer's position. I really appreciate your coming in today.
Appreciate
We just have a minute or two left, and one other thing that I gained from this is, I think it's great that you're from northern Minnesota, real northern Minnesota. Sorry you have to drive so far to work every single day.
Oh, it's plenty worth it.
I hope you've seen I hope you haven't seen a lot of deer en route back and forth, but yeah, you have a view of, and I've heard that we don't have enough representation argument from one of the particular county commissioners, current commissioners. This way, you have the view from up there. And so I want to tell our viewers right now that you have an opportunity to make a proper decision when you go to the polls on November 6th. Becoming educated about who you're voting for is more important than casting that vote, because you are choosing who you want to rule over you in these departments that represent you. So I encourage all of our listeners, become informed, tell your friends, tune in to my YouTube channel if they can't get cable TV, MarciaStromgren, and you will be able to have them go and listen to Brandon and his experience. And I really appreciate you coming in today, Brandon. Thank you so much. Have a great day.